Indy Movie.
Hey Indy Mogul, Zach Finfrock here for Backyard Effects. Today is Your Effects, where we show you your effects, tutorials you guys send in. The first Mogulween Your Effects is by Dave Thomas, and he did some medieval knight armor. And no, it's not the Dave Thomas from Wendy's. I was disappointed myself. Alright, let's check it out.
Today on BFX, we're going to be creating our very own suit of medieval armor. Shopping list. Craft foam, hot glue gun, glue, metallic silver spray paint, scissors, masking tape, Mod Podge, a pair of old gloves, newspaper, and an oven.
Simple time lapse. Woo!
First, we'll build a basic breastplate. For starters, I created a stunt dummy torso based on the classic BFX build. Check out that episode if you need help. This way you have something to build on that fits your actor's proportions in case you don't have an actual mannequin dress form, or any friends. I stuffed my dummy with an old mattress topper I had lying around, to give it a bit more stability while I worked. Now that you have a dress form, start attaching newspaper to it with masking tape. Try to cover most of the torso with about 2 layers of newspaper. I went a bit overboard with the masking tape because I wanted my pattern to have more durability, but you can just use the plain paper if you don't intend on making more armor from this pattern. When you've got your basic shape, cut the pattern off of your dummy at the back and shoulders. Flatten this out and you've got yourself a nice template. I cut my full pattern in half and only used the one for tracing, so I could guarantee that both sides of the breastplate would match. Now, depending on the size of your foam sheets, you may need to hot glue some of them together to have a large enough starting area. Now you'll want to transfer the pattern to the foam and carefully cut it out with scissors. Since the foam hasn't been sealed yet, it's easily punctured, so be careful. Once you cut out both halves of your breastplate, hot glue the seams at the shoulders. At this point, you can trim the 2 halves until they fit together properly. Now you can glue the 2 halves together at the front. To give the breastplate a bit more shape, cut in at angles from the bottom to create a dart in the foam, and then glue them together. Again, use your reference photos to help you get the right shape. Next, I decided to add a skirt to the breastplate. A manly skirt, of course. Anyway, the last step is to add small details and trim to cover any hot glue lines and give the armor a smoother look. I chose to add trim to all of the visible seams on the armor. You can add more designs if you wish. Go ahead. Be creative. And no, we aren't done yet, but don't worry, it gets easier. For the helmet, I just cut out sections of craft foam and attached them to an old mannequin head I just happened to have lying around. Slowly, you'll build these foam pieces into the helmet design that you want. I went for a sectional, plated sort of look. If you want to get hardcore about it, check out www.armorarchive.org for actual armor patterns. With a little modification, you can use them to create your craft foam pieces. No welding required. Once it's firm enough, remove it and hot glue the seams inside the helmet as well. Lastly, you can cut out holes for your peepers. At first I went with 2 individual ones, but ultimately I just made one long open strip. The last pieces of armor I made were simple gauntlets. I made a quick pattern using some old poster board and then cut it out of the foam. Now, since craft foam springs back into place when bent, I had to employ a different technique to shape the gauntlets. Craft foam can actually be shaped using heat, so with safety first, I placed the foam on an upside down pan in the oven for 30 seconds at 250 degrees. Then I quickly removed it and shaped it around my forearm. Wear gloves and an old thick shirt. The foam won't be too hot, but that's no excuse for being an idiot. And as you can see, the gauntlets are shaped and ready to roll. Or defend, actually. Now you might be thinking, Dave, that armor is nice and all, but aren't you forgetting something? Like, paint? Correct. However, craft foam can't be painted straight up. It actually absorbs paint like a sponge. So first, we're going to need to seal all of the armor with good old Mod Podge. Paint on 1 to 3 smooth and even coats, and the foam should be ready to tackle a sexy metallic paint job. Give each coat about 15 minutes to dry. And finally, use a coat of metallic silver spray paint to finish the job. fan-freaking-tastic.
Alright, next up is the Mogul Your Effects Random Effects Montage. And I have to say personally, I'm very proud of this one because you guys actually did send in a lot of awesome practical effects. Let's watch it. The next effect is a giant talking head by Mike Cameron. He's going to show you how to do it in Canada, because that's where he's from. Because you see the logo in... Just watch.
This week, we're pulling a move from the old Jim Henson playbook, because we're building a giant talking head. We're going to have two parts to our build. A giant talking head and a pair of oversized hands. 1.5 meters of stretchy fabric, 1/4 meter of different color stretchy fabric, 1/4 meter of see-through black mesh, 1.5 meters of 1/4-inch foam, plastic eyes, a small magnetic motor, 3 9-volt battery connectors, a 1.5 meter length of electrical cabling, a clicker switch, hot glue gun, metal coat hangers, scrap wood, zip ties, duct tape, electrical tape, an old stuffed animal, a pair of old gloves.
Simple time lapse. Woo!
Start by taking your metal coat hangers and bending them into the shape of your head, connecting the separate vertical and horizontal pieces with your zip ties and duct tape. Make sure to measure your actor beforehand so you have adequate room for their head and for the moving mouth in front. Next, measure the distance between the front and back of your upper jaw frame and cut your scrap wood to size. Drill 2 holes on each corner to attach your scrap wood to the frame. Attach it with zip ties through the holes. Now take your motor, 3 battery connectors, and electrical cabling and use a pair of scissors to strip the ends. Connect the ends together using your electrical tape in the following order. The motor to the red end of the first battery connector, the 3 battery connectors going from black to red, the black end of the last battery connector to the electrical cable, and then the electrical cable back to the motor. At the end of your electrical cable, connect the clicker switch. I tried a number of ways to create the moving mouth, but what I ended up going with was creating a solid lower jawline and taking one section of coat hanger to be the lower section of mouth, connecting to the rear of the upper jawline. Use any kind of L connector to secure the motor aiming downwards to your scrap wood and attach the pin to the back of the lower lip, sliding through a thin metal piece to secure it. Create a container for your batteries on top of your scrap wood. I just used a small paper box and attached it using the zip ties and duct tape. Now, every time you tap your clicker, it will activate the magnet in the motor, pulling up the pin, creating a quick talking look. Make sure to leave some space between the bottom of your lower lip and the top of your chin for the foam and fabric. Then take some of your black mesh and sew it to the interior of your mouth. And it's foam time. Measure your head and cut your foam fabric into separate pieces. Hot glue the separate pieces to your frame, cutting each piece here and there as you go to match the curves of your head. And be careful, hot glue is very hot. Cut out some large holes for your eyes and take 2 more pieces of your black mesh and hot glue it onto the foam. Hot glue your plastic eyes onto your black mesh, leaving enough room for your actor to see out. The hard part is done. Take your head measurements and cut out the fabric for your skin, sew it together and slide it on. Make sure to leave some extra at the bottom so you can tuck it into your actor's clothing. Cut out the holes for your eyes and mouth and hot glue the extra in behind. Lastly, chop your extra fabric to match your jawline and attach. Now to make it pretty. You can decorate your head as you like, but I decided to go with a puffy nose, big red lips, and Vulcan ears. I used stuffing from our stuffed animal for the ears and nose, and just to punch up the talking motion a little bit more, I tossed in another section of fabric below the bottom lip. For his hair, goatee, and eyebrows, we cut up said stuffed animal and hot glued each piece on. Try to get a large furry animal. Mine is sort of small, so I didn't have enough for the entire head, which gave him kind of a crazy Navi Smurf biker vibe. To make the hands, take your old pair of gloves and duct tape the fingers together in 2 rows. Measure your gloves and cut your fabric to size, sew it together and slide it on. Voila, monster hands.
That's it for this Your Effects. Both of these effects can be found on the Indy Mogul YouTube page, Indy Mogul Extra, because they were both audition episodes. On a completely side note, we here at Wayside Creations just released a teaser for our Fallout-themed fan film, Fallout Nuka Break. You can go to www.nukabreak.com to check it out. It's got plenty of cool costumes and effects, and it's going to be released hopefully soon, so you can check it out then. Alright, see you next week.